again. And here comes Ivanka.
And John Bolton. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Holy crap, I've broken out of the box. Those of you who were here yesterday, you might have noticed that we were using a different platform so we could get Ron in here. And I was surrounded by a black box. I've broken free of the box. You too can break free of your box for only $19.95. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. Just checking, just testing my ability to do motivational speaking. I'm just kidding. Of course. Just messing with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. It's a weird show. I'm a weird person. That's what you get here, along with your news. With a side of weird. That should be a tagline. Welcome to the show, Around the Nation. I'm in a strange mood today. Even though we've got some rather disastrous news, as usual, but also some good news. So we're going to talk about, of course, Donald Trump's London visit, or UK visit, I should say, including some fun stuff, including Ivanka gets booed. Fun times, as usual. Then, of course, on to more serious stuff, including where was Joe Biden over the weekend? Or more importantly, where were some of Joe Biden's advisors? So I'm going to unravel that mystery, and we'll talk about that. Then we've got important news about Flint. I know I haven't talked about Flint for a while, but it's still really, really important what's going on there. There's some investigations. And then we have the end is nigh. We have a date of when civilization could possibly end due to climate change. So you're not going to want to miss that. Maybe you should, if you're still young enough, make some plans, or maybe stop making plans. It's funny, the other day, I was looking at my mortgage, and apparently it'll be paid off in 2049. Just 1 year. 1 year. So that's fun. So fun and disaster, all mixed in with today's show. So please like and share the stream. Share with your friends so they can share in the gloom and doom of the show today, as well as the fun stuff, making fun of the idiot president, all that stuff. Also, please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. In fact, I want to thank a few patrons today. Dennis Cloutier. Hopefully I said that right. Carmen Nayale Ambris. Brian Carroll. Charlotte Green. Jorge Hago. And Christina Oakes. So I want to thank all those patrons, of course. Christina running my social media on the TYT Nation account. Go follow that at ATN on TYT. She's got some brilliant social media tweets, tweets on my social media. It's great. She does a fantastic job. So I want to thank her for her work on that. Okay. Also, check it out if you want some merchandise. There's like mugs. There's shirts and stuff. Check that out. It's on our Teespring. I'm such a great salesman. Look at me selling this stuff. With I guess it's cool. Go ahead and maybe check it out. I don't know if you feel like it later on. It goes to help the show and all that stuff. Terrible salesman, but that's why I'm not in sales. That's why I'm in news. Anyway. Again, weird mood today. All right, guys. Let's dive into the show. All right. So let's go to London. Couldn't resist. It's a good day when you laugh at your own sidebars. All right. Con. All right. Serious face. Okay. Now, London Mayor Sadiq Khan had a few choice words for the president, who is visiting his city. Now, Khan originally wrote an op-ed that caught the umbrage of President Trump. So, before he landed in London a few days ago, he tweeted this, quote, Sadiq Khan, who by all accounts has done a terrible job as mayor of London, has been foolishly nasty to the visiting president of the United States. Notice him talking in the third person. Hilarious. By far the most important ally of the United Kingdom. He is a stone-cold loser who should focus on crime in London, not me. Khan reminds me very much of our very dumb and incompetent mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, who has also done a terrible job. Only half his height. He's making fun of his height now. Hilarious. In any event, I look forward to being a great friend to the United Kingdom, and I'm looking very much forward to my visit. Landing now. Gotta make that announcement. Landing now. Yeah, okay, whatever. What a child. Again, baby, sad. Now, in an interview with CNN later on, after those comments, we actually heard from a competent and stable leader, Sadiq Khan. He said, quote, that he wasn't offended by the president calling him a stone-cold loser earlier this week, although he said it isn't sort of the sort of behavior he expects from an American president. Believe me, brother, we know. We know all too well. So what does it remind him of? I love this. Quote, this is the sort of behavior I would expect from an 11-year-old. But it's for him to decide how he behaves. It's not for me to respond in a like manner. I think it's beneath me to do childish tweets and name-calling. Yeah, okay, look. It's not beneath you, but it is certainly not beneath me. President Trump is a ridiculously stupid embarrassment to the United States. What you cannot say, I can totally say. I love it. Now, Khan also warned, in a more serious note, that the United Kingdom should not pin its hopes on negotiating a trade deal with President Trump. Now, he said, quote, his mood changes from hour to hour. He can be upset by an article in a Sunday newspaper to the effect that he resorts to name-calling, and of course is referencing the article that Khan had written. Now, what did Khan say? Well, I'm going to have to paraphrase here on that. But basically, he said that Donald Trump is not a good, trustworthy leader and not a good representative of the people of the United States. Simply put. And that's because of stuff like this. He's incredibly unstable. Imagine if it were President Obama and like David Cameron, right? I think David Cameron was very conservative, and and Barack Obama apparently was a noted Marxist communist liberal, at least according to the right wing. So what if Obama had went to the UK, and as he was landing, and after David Cameron maybe pinged him on something, calling him too liberal, whatever, right? And Obama's like, that stone-cold loser, David Cameron. No, it would never happen. But if it did, the right-wing head would absolutely explode, right? Because how dare Obama go and attack the honorable David Cameron, our greatest ally. Now, what are the conservatives saying now? Silence. They're not saying anything about this. At least none of the usual suspects. Of course, you have the anti-Trump conservatives out there, but they're few and far between. And so, look, the president's unstable. And everybody knows it. But for now, it seems to fall on foreign leaders to actually say the obvious. Not a very stable genius. In fact, when you have to go out and talk about how very stable you are, and he has said this, he just said this probably as recent as 2 weeks ago, right? Where he came out and was like, I am very, very stable genius. It would kind of point that maybe you're the opposite if you have to go around saying that. But look, Khan is right on policy because it would be very, very difficult for the United Kingdom and the United States to come to a trade deal. I mean, for right now, even though there's Brexit going on, it's kind of hard for you to, until Brexit is over, make a deal with the UK, right? Between the trade deal between the US and the UK. Now, Donald Trump says, we're going to have a tremendous trade deal as soon as we're done or as soon as the UK is done with Brexit, it's going to be an amazing trade deal. Yeah, okay. Well, good luck with that. But Khan's saying, no, even if that happens, even if we do go through Brexit, no, we're not going to have a trade deal. Why is that? Because Donald Trump has no idea what he's doing. He changes his mind all the time, has very, very thin skin, and cannot be trusted to negotiate anything. He's got no deal-making skills. And do you remember how much he bragged about his deal-making? And he still does, right? Well, let's look at his track record. North Korea fell apart. Now, that sucks because I actually wanted success with North Korea. I wanted there to be a nuclear deal. I wanted North Korea to denuclearize Kim Jong-un, all that stuff, right? I wanted Trump to be successful. Instead, we got what we got. There was literally no deal, and then Kim Jong-un basically killed his own, executed his own envoy for failing to deal with Trump. And I think it's actually kind of unfair because look at what he had to deal with. Seriously. Not only that, but of course, Trump ripped up the only successful nuclear deal, the one that we had with Iran. Not only that, but he cannot get an infrastructure deal at home, domestically, with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Those two are the weakest two Democrats in leadership that I've ever seen. I've never seen such weak leadership on the Democratic side, and nonetheless, still cannot get a deal with Donald Trump, even though they really, really want to get a deal with Donald Trump on infrastructure. And of course, Trump's infrastructure plan is all about privatizing, roads and stuff, and then putting toll booths everywhere. So I don't really want to compromise on that. But nonetheless, you can't even get Chuck and Nancy to roll over. How weak are you? But anyway, look, the whole thing is because he's got no idea what he's doing. So I have very, very little hope that Trump can negotiate a decent post-Brexit deal. That's if Brexit ever happens, and that's a whole nother can of worms, right? I don't even know at this point. I mean, Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, basically couldn't get it done, and so now she's resigning later this month. Actually, I think it's as early as next week that she's resigning. I mean, it's crazy. But look, again, he's right. And by the way, I cannot wait to get a competent leader again. But, and I say that because we're in the middle of a presidential primary right now. And I know it hasn't really heated up or whatever for most people, and most people still aren't paying attention. But it's going to get to a point where the Democratic primaries do start to take center stage. And so it's important that we actually get a competent leader, but that shouldn't be the only, of course, goal here. It's not enough to just be competent, even though we have survived Trump complete incompetence for nearly 4 years. And of course, the incompetence of Bush before Trump was legendary. Now, of course, some people are like, oh, Bush, it doesn't sound too bad. Me, of course, he's a war criminal. And so I remember the Bush years. And those were also incredibly disastrous, though not quite as disastrous as it is now. No, my whole point is, competence, not quite enough. No, I need someone with a vision, a progressive vision on where to actually take this country. And so, and the reason that that's important is because you have to remember, with all that we complain about Trump, we have to remember that he's a symptom of the disease. He's not the disease himself. You remove him without any sort of lasting fundamental changes, you're going to get another Trump. And so I want someone who's bold, progressive, and has a vision and actually works for regular American people and not multinational corporations. I think that's the only way that we can end up avoiding something worse than Trump. Again, what could be worse than Trump, you say? Well, being a veteran of the Bush years, not a literal veteran, but having lived through the Bush years, we all said, what could be worse than Bush? Well, we have our answer. There is always something worse, someone worse, because when it comes to the Republican Party right now, there's no bottom to that barrel. They'll find someone worse if they can, which is why we've got to stop it now by voting for someone in the primaries who is bold, progressive, and can beat Donald Trump. I think I'm fairly clear with that. Okay. We're going to do this. Come on now. Oh, I didn't hook that up. Okay, I know what the problem is. Whoops. Okay. So the Trump family is in the middle of their visit to the UK. And I mean the entire Trump family. Even Tiffany has showed up. And while the Trump family is seemingly enjoying the plans, the chance to cosplay at being royalty, the average Briton is none too thrilled to have America's first reality show White House family in the middle of their country. And boy, I do not blame them at all. In fact, why don't you get a load of this video from Fox News where Ivanka gets a warm reception.
Again? And here comes Ivanka
And John Bolton,
and some security.
the National Security Advisor, and Ivanka Trump, walking across together.
Does that sound like some booing?
Yeah, it does. And it's not for Ivanka, it's for John Bolton, and he loves it. He pretty much is looked at as somebody is the tough guy in that administration, and he loves that label.
Oh, no. No, they're not booing Ivanka. They're booing John Bolton, and he loves it. I mean, if you listen close enough, you can hear Bolton. Bolton. Right. Okay. I think odds are, and maybe I'm underestimating people, but maybe they have no idea who John Bolton is. Again, or maybe they do. He's a disastrous war hawk, in case you didn't know. And I would think that British people are likely a little bit more informed than the average American. But still, she came out a little bit before Bolton, and so those boos, those are for you, homegirl. Those are your boos. Now, once social media got wind of this, and they always do, that moment got even better. Ruby Doo says, "Oh, it's for Ivanka. Hashtag grifters from hell." Ooh. Ken Padgett had a response to the Fox News spin by Brian Kilmeade by saying, quote, "Any spin will do for the MAGA people." Oh, John Bolton. Yeah, they're booing John Bolton. Good, because John Bolton, he loves it. Who loves getting booed? Unless you're a heel in the WWE, right? You do not want to get booed in a country that you're going to. I mean, because booing leads to, Trump baby blimps. Oh, oops, that's already happened. It also leads to shoe throwing and or milkshaking. None of which you actually want to be involved in. But by the way, what was up with Ivanka's Cruella de Vil dress? Really? Did you actually make that from real Dalmatians, Ivanka? I'm just asking. Nancy Schultz says, "Boo Bolton." That's fun. Comrade Iron says, "But don't worry, this is not a propaganda network." Fox News. No wonder they don't show it in the UK. Juno is back. Says, "Booze and being hated is good. Everyone should love it and love that label." Yes, absolutely. And finally, my favorite, Faux Outrage says, "I was saying boo earns." That is an awesome, obscure Simpsons reference, and I absolutely love it. As I also love Ivanka and John Bolton both getting booed. Because if anybody deserves it, it's both. And actually, I think probably John Bolton deserves it more. Because he is a literal war criminal. Isn't this UK trip fun? All right. One more here. And now we go to... oh, that doesn't work. Don Jr. The social media made Don Jr. feel very, very welcome. after he posted a picture of himself outside of Buckingham Palace. Now, the president's adult children, yes, all of them, joined him and First Lady Melania Trump, as well as some White House staffers, on a state visit to the UK, where they met with the Queen Elizabeth II, and Prime Minister Theresa May. Now, Trump Jr. tweeted this out. He said, Buckingham Palace, an incredible experience with Her Majesty the Queen, truly unforgettable. Probably because they will most likely never see anything that opulent again, because maybe they might end up going to prison. I don't know. Or at least never be welcomed back as soon as they're out of power. That said, their presence raised a few questions on social media, especially after the president's eldest son, who apparently is supposed to help run the family business while Trump is busy making America great again, posted a photo of himself meeting the Queen. In fact, Catherine Watson had asked the White House, or not asked, but she did tweet out, the White House hasn't really offered an explanation for why the president's adult children, who don't work in the administration, are on the state visit. Now remember, the whole gang is there. The whole Trump clan. Even Tiffany is there. And look, the thing about that is they weren't invited. No, the Queen had invited Trump, which is the president, and the First Lady to be there. What the heck are the kids are doing there, right? It's not as if it was early in Obama's term, for example, when Sasha and Malia are like 11 and 13, right? And so, of course, they're going to go with their parents. No, this is adult kids that just decided, we're going to show up anyway. We're just coming to the UK, and I guess we're going to cosplay as royalty. Okay, fun. Now, I want to go to the tweets here because these are fun. Jen Stanley asks, you shouldn't be there. You're not part of the administration. That's less of a question and more of a, hey, what are you doing here? You do not belong here. Now, Rob asks, who's paying for you to be there? And there's actually a lot of questions along this vein. Fast food, over 1,000 hamburgers, says, independent businessman running the Trump organization, sure. Christine Dominici says, why is he there? Are American taxpayers paying for this? Now, again, that's a really good question. Hi-Res Elf says, if it's what you say, I love it. Sam Litzinger says, why are you there, sir? Well, I told you. It's to try to make connections, probably. If you're Ivanka, make connections for business, which you shouldn't be doing, which she just got doing for the Chinese, or with the Chinese again, trying to pimp her businesses. Don Jr., again, probably there just to cosplay as a member of royalty, the royal family. Otherwise, I don't know. What are you doing there? This is not supposed to be an all-expense-paid vacation. But again, the Trump family, they know nothing but the grift. Todd says, again, how do you and your family not have a good tailor? It's remarkable, and I'm baffled by this. And it's a response, of course, to some of the pictures that were floating around that were not too flattering to Donald Trump. One of them had kind of asked, why does the president of the United States look like Oswald Cobblepot? Oh, that's amazing. Melissa Ironman says, I really hope the Queen can forget your dreadful visit. Calla says, you'll soon be forgotten, permanently forgotten. Enjoy your unforgettable experience. Secret Agent says, gross. And Grudge says, standing totally normal. A Trump tradition? Kalu says, truly regrettable. And No Redactions Lisa says, they're counting this over this morning. Because you never know when a member of the Trump clan is going to end up trying to steal something. That's kind of who they are. All right. So we're going to take a break. We'll come back with Joe Biden. Very important stuff. Update on Flint and the end of civilization. So we've got our light stories out of the way. It gets heavy from here. All right, guys. I'm going to read your comments and super chats after the break. So stay right here. Please like and share. We'll be right back. Around the Nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation, right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, back with some fun comments here from you guys, and I love it. Star Trek says, it is a criminal enterprise. The Trump family crime syndicate, that's right, as even Steve Bannon pointed out, it is not a semi-criminal enterprise, it is a criminal enterprise. That's crazy. And then the Jing Sana says, because they're using it, the Trumps, for a free trip to the UK, grifter's going to grift. Yeah, our tax money going to that, so feel great about that one. And Lancer Solaris has some advice to try to get rid of the static. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll check that out later. The contacts. Wesley Wiles, a non-member, makes a great point. Naomi Klein makes the best point. Returning to a time before Trump puts us in a broken system that created and elected Trump. Exactly. And yeah, that's literally the point. And we have a way to do this in the primaries to nominate a person that will be not just the anti-Trump, but will actually try to solve the disease that causes Donald Trump. And that, of course, is our current economic system, basically the system in total, the establishment. Pranay says Bush was a war criminal and a torturer, and Donald added children to the death camps. Let me just add Yemen. Donald Trump's support for the disastrous war in Yemen, to continue sending arms to Saudi Arabia. Not only that, but of course, you have an increase, and this didn't get reported enough. I talked about it. Unfortunately, not a lot of people were interested in watching that video, but you can go back months ago, and there was a report on Donald Trump increasing drone strikes, taking the drone program operated under Bush and Obama and basically putting it on steroids, increasing signature strikes, drone strike assassinations, making basically what the Obama administration did, which was abhorrent, that much worse. And so many more innocent people have been killed in these countries due to our drone warfare. And look, Obama and Bush, they opened the door. Obama increased drone strikes, the use of drone warfare. And now the Donald Trump, once he gained power, that was a weapon he inherited, and he ran with it. And so, look, that's what happens. You can't continue to allow this type of U.S. imperialism to run basically rampant. Okay, we're not even at war in these countries where our drones are operating and killing people. And yet, here we are. Well, we've got to put a stop to this type of U.S. imperialism because, ironically, a lot of these drone strikes, when they kill innocent people, they end up creating more terrorists. And I guess maybe to the defense contractors, that might be the point. Create more terror, and you end up making more money selling weapons to fight the terrorists. In that context, who's really the terrorists? It's a question we all need to ask. All right. Again, it's a little dark. Very dark. But we'll do that. Okay. Anyway, now let's go to Biden here. Let's talk about that. But before I do, the Electoral College is a rigged system, says Laura B. Absolutely. No, you're right about that. I know a lot of people are really touchy about using the word rigged, but in a way, that's kind of what that means. They literally get to choose who is the nominee, the Democratic nominee for president. So I think in that case, yeah, I think that's an appropriate use of the word. And we need to do away with the Electoral College. And there is very few Democrats that are actually talking about that. Sadly, even progressives, some major progressives have not put forward hey, maybe we should eliminate the Electoral College. Not enough of them have. And so it's that's kind of sad because that's basically a way for Republicans to continue winning even though they have lost a popular vote. And I know why, because these red states will yell and scream and say, oh, the tyranny of the majority. Well, right now, with all that power afforded to those small states, which, let's be honest, the whole reason for the Electoral College was to appease the slave states, we have the tyranny of the minority right now. So, one or two people in Kansas and Oklahoma are worth 10,000 or so. In California, it's crazy. But they definitely outweigh the rest of us. All right. Anyway, enough on that. But great points all around. And I love the interaction from you guys. Okay. Now let's move on. The California Democratic Party recently had its convention featuring such heavyweights as John Hickenlooper and John Delaney, who both recently got booed, and it was awesome. And some guy, of course, named Bernie Sanders, who seemed to be really popular with the young people. I'm not quite sure why. Mysteriously absent was the presumptive frontrunner, Joseph Biden, who, by the way, in recent polls has lost about 7 points off of his lead against Senator Sanders. Interesting. Now, while Biden was apparently somewhere else during the convention, apparently speaking at a campaign event in Ohio, his aides were in the Bay Area, and they were soliciting money. Now, according to CNBC, advisors Simone Sanders, who recently in 2016 actually had worked in the Bernie Sanders campaign, switched over to Team Biden this year, or I should say this cycle, and Cristobal Alex had gathered Sunday with more than 24 bundlers, people who raised money from high-dollar donors, at the San Francisco home of Sandy Robertson. Now, Sandy Robertson is co-founder of private equity firm Francisco Partners, according to people familiar with the matter. So, here you have a get-together with two high-profile advisors with the Biden campaign going and soliciting large donations. Now, some of these other people that had come to bundle at this event were Richard Bloom, an investment banker and husband of U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, veteran trial lawyer Joseph Kotchett, Steve Wesley, founder of tech investment firm The Wesley Group, Denise Bauer, former U.S. ambassador to Belgium, and Wade Randelet, the president of Dashboard Technology. So all these people are basically bundling and meeting to raise money for Joe Biden to win not only the Democratic nomination, but in their minds, hopefully, to beat Donald J. Trump in the general election. Now, all this makes you kind of wonder who the corporate candidate is in this race and who the establishment prefers. Now, I remember that it was originally supposed to be Kamala Harris, and, she was the favorite. Heck, I even said that she was the favored one. Turns out, no. I guess they forgot that whole thing about we should have women and women of color leading the party, and now they prefer, and the money prefers, mostly, Joe Biden. Fascinating. Now, Robert said it had confirmed to CNBC that the meeting did take place, but declined to provide details, other than saying, quote, "We had a very successful meeting, but I cannot comment beyond that at the moment." You had a very successful meeting. What does that mean? It means that likely Biden might have got a lot of big donations lined up. Now, that, of course, is nothing new for this group and for the establishment preferred candidate. In fact, Robertson had hosted high-dollar fundraisers for President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton during both of their presidential runs. Bloom, Feinstein's husband, has invested in Democratic campaigns for years, as well as was part of the host committee for a Hollywood fundraiser that took in $700,000 for Biden's campaign in May. So that's where all the high-dollar donations are coming from. Kotchett helped to raise up to $100,000 for Obama's 2008 run for president, according to data from the Nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics. So again, there's a lot of money. So now here we have the usual suspects. As you can see, they've been heavily invested in establishment politics, raising money for Obama, Clinton, and now Biden. Is it any wonder that he is the favorite? Now, these are big financial bundlers that raise large sums of money off wealthy, more establishment donors. Now, this, I think, is what is wrong with our politics. Wealthy people, corporate donors, have too much influence. And so while these advisors were talking to the donors, and while Biden was doing a campaign event, the other candidates were appealing to Democratic voters and showing people their vision of America. Now, in the, context of John Delaney and Hickenlooper, I don't agree with their vision of America. I don't agree that, Medicare, it's too hard to do, it's bad policy, as Delaney had said and got booed for almost 2 minutes straight. Or, Hickenlooper attacking, or basically sounding like a right-winger and saying we should not have socialism. But at least they went there. At least they faced what they probably knew was going to be a very hostile audience. And still, at least they had the balls to show up. Joe Biden, not so much. Now, some California delegates took to social media to show how upset they were that Biden decided to dodge the convention. Carrie Templeton tweeted out a picture of a California highway sign with graffiti that says, "Biden can't win Michigan." She added, "True, don't you know, and apparently he doesn't need to appear in California either." Now, that's interesting because, for one, do you want to know who won the Michigan primary last time? In case you forgot, it was Bernie Sanders, with an upset win over Hillary Clinton, who was expected to win the state. And he narrowly was able to get that state, right, to win that state. Now, California was completely different. However, thanks to a lot of the work from the activists and them entering into the California Democratic Party, we've seen a little bit of change. And now that California seems to be going a lot more towards Bernie Sanders. And we'll see how that shakes out, as California now is one of the first states, not the first, but one of the first states to run their primary contest. Now, here's the thing. Bernie, by the way, mentioning him, he was at the convention because he doesn't need to run to the big donors or hold private fundraising events with big money donors. No, he was there. He was talking to the people and spreading his message. Now, that's the opposite of Joe Biden. Why? Well, because Joe Biden doesn't want to make a lot of public appearances. See, Biden would rather have these events where they feature him as the marquee guest, and these events usually end up at the homes of established Biden supporters. Biden's allies are also setting the stage for a San Francisco-focused fundraising tour that will stop in Silicon Valley, where he can raise money. So we see who he's courting, we see who he prefers, right, to talk to. But why is he not talking to Democrats? Well, there's two reasons, right? Well, for one, he's right now ahead in the polls. So I think this is part of that hubris that goes along with the Democratic frontrunner, or being a lot like Hillary Clinton, and saying, well, why do I need to talk to Democrats? I'm not interested in courting the base. I'm not interested in talking to the base. No, I'm going to go to Ohio, and I'm going to talk to people there, and I'm going to say how moderate I am, and how we need to reach out to the other side of the aisle. Haven't we seen this before? I think we have. And look, there's also another angle to that, and that's, of course, the mythology that has been built up around Joe Biden. I mean, a lot of people who don't know his history, who are, not very involved Democratic Party voters, they look at Joe Biden and they say, oh, it's working class Uncle Joe. He's a friend to Obama. He's the guy in the memes. I love the memes. Everybody loves the memes. Well, it turns out that in reality, that's not who he is. And the more he talks and the more that comes out about his past, the less popular he becomes. Again, he just recently faced a 7-point drop in the newest poll. There was another candidate that had a similar problem, that the more they talk. The more you got to know about them in their past, the less popular they became. We saw that happen, and they became our nominee anyway. And, well, we saw how that movie ended. No, it's time to nominate a real progressive who doesn't take big corporate or big donor money, has a vision, and isn't afraid to talk to people and to represent them. Okay. Moving on. Supposed to be funny, but it's really not. Okay. We've got a pretty big update in the Flint water investigation. Now, former Governor Rick Snyder recently had his phone seized by authorities as the investigation into who knew what and when as it related to the Flint water crisis. Now, according to CNN, Snyder and more than 65 other current or former officials have had their cell phones or other information seized in connection with the investigation into the crisis in Flint, where cost-cutting measures, they allege, led to tainted drinking water that contained lead and other toxins. Now, in reality, switching the water over actually wasn't a cost-cutting measure at all. I'm not really sure why they wanted to switch over. It turned out that keeping the water source originally would have actually saved a lot more money because they wouldn't have to have gone through the treatment measures, which they apparently ignored, and that, of course, caused lead from the pipes to leach into the water. Now, as far as this seizing their cell phones, now, right now, CNN says, look, Snyder hasn't been charged of anything yet, but he just had his cell phone seized. This is an unprecedented step. There's a former governor having his private communications seized in relation to Flint in an investigation, which could be a criminal investigation. I would hope it would be. Now, more information here from Michigan Solicitor General Fadwa Hammoud. In a statement to CNN, she said, quote, "The prosecution is aware of substantial potential evidence that was not provided to the original prosecution team from the onset of the investigation. The team is currently in the process of obtaining the evidence through a variety of means, including search warrants. Now, the team is also conducting a thorough review of existing and newly received evidence pertaining to the Flint water crisis," the statement continued. Now, what evidence that they're looking for, or they might find, I don't know. But we now know that Snyder's iPhone, iPad, and hard drive have all been seized by authorities, according to a search warrant signed in May 19th. So, I mean, if you're Governor Snyder, you might get a little bit worried. As for everyone else,
ladies and gentlemen, we got it.
no, not yet, but who knows? Again, let me go back to something that's a little bit different, but I think you can draw a parallel. Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen had his records seized, his office raided, and he ended up, of course, becoming a co-conspirator, President Trump, and now he's currently in prison. I'm not saying the same thing's going to happen to Snyder, two completely unrelated cases. But I think this is related to Snyder not presenting evidence that he knew about this beforehand, which I think should be considered a criminal action. Now, the search warrant also included similar information seized from 22 employees who worked in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, 11 in the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and more than 33 employees in the governor's office. There's no way with that many people knowing that, and there were so many people that actually knew what was going on in Flint. There's no way the governor didn't know beforehand. Definitely before he said, or definitely before when he said he started to know about this issue and tried to fix it. Now, I've got to give a huge shout out, of course, to everybody who's been talking about Flint. especially Jordan Sheridan over at Status Quo. He's been on location in Flint more times than I can count. I live in Michigan. I have not been to Flint as much as Jordan has. Now, he's been looking into homes, talking to residents, and most importantly, trying to get the truth about what's going on. And whatever else you might think about him, he is very dedicated to helping the people of Michigan and in Flint and exposing the gross mismanagement of the Michigan government. And look, it's, been under control from Republicans, but I don't really care who's controlled it. Whoever is responsible. And yes, it looks like a lot of blame does go to the governor, but also some Democrats maybe on the board who decided they wanted to switch over the water sources. Whoever it was, I don't care. I just want justice for Flint. This is not a partisan issue. I don't really care what party poisoned Flint. Somebody did, and we need to get justice. The people of Flint deserve justice. And Snyder, look, again, I think his role is that he knew something about it, didn't fix it right away, and then lied about what he knew when he knew it. Now, if they find emails and correspondence that ends up proving that, then one tough nerd might find out what it's like to wear orange. We'll see what happens. We'll see what they find in those hard drives. We'll see what they find in those cell phone records. But either way, I think former Governor Snyder might be going to bed a little nervous tonight. Okay. Now, speaking of going to bed nervous, let's get to climate change. The end is coming in 2050. Now, at least that's the analysis of a disastrous new climate paper published by a climate think tank and endorsed by a former Australian defense chief and senior Royal Navy commander. Now, the analysis was published by Breakthrough National Centre for Climate Restoration in Melbourne, Australia. And they describe climate change as a, quote, near to mid term existential threat to human civilization, and sets out a plausible scenario of where the business as usual could lead over the next 30 years. And of course, over the next 30 years, it could end up being a disaster. Now remember, given the time frame and the context, you got to remember some of the most ambitious climate action plans do have us being renewable energy by the year 2050, which is, of course, the year that it's going to start to get really, really bad. Now, Inslee's plan, Jay Inslee, is actually the most ambitious. According to Greenpeace and according to his own plan, he wants to be 100% fossil fuel free by 2030. That is ambitious. Now, these are, of course, plans put forward by Democratic candidates for 2020. Donald Trump and the Republican Party's plan is drill, baby, drill. Privatize the gain, socialize the losses. So basically, the oil CEOs are going to make a lot of money while the planet burns. And then what? They'll be dead. And then we'll be soon after. We won't be that far behind. Now, there is, of course, an air of caution among some of these projections because, of course, they're not 100% accurate, as most climate models and projections are. Nonetheless, it kind of gives you a picture of what you might expect. Now, the paper argues that potentially extremely serious outcomes of climate change, of climate-related security threats, are often more probable than conventionally assumed. So basically, they're saying it could actually be worse, but we're not 100% sure, and we can't be. Now, the paper also goes on to say that they are, quote, almost impossible to quantify because they fall outside the human experience of the last 1,000 years. So there's a little bit of, we're not sure, we've never dealt with this before. And that's not a good thing. We can't even accurately model this because it's so far out of the range of what we've ever experienced on Earth as a race. So now here's the funny thing about that, right? About the climate models. Now you got climate deniers out there that always complain, oh, the models are too dire, they're fake, they're fake. You guys are alarmists. It's not really going to happen that way. You guys are just being so alarmist and you're trying to scare the crap out of people. Well, here's this study saying, actually, no, we think those models were way too conservative. Even the UN model, which predicted 12 years, disaster if we don't do something and go 100% carbon neutral within the next 10, under 12 years now. They said that was too conservative. And I don't mean politically conservative, I mean scientifically conservative, where they tried not to scare the crap out of people while also saying, this is what could happen. Well, we don't think it could happen quite as bad, but it's still going to be fairly bad. This study says, no, it's going to be bad. In fact, it's probably going to be worse than you could ever imagine. Think about that. That's not good. Now, scientists have also been overly optimistic in their models, when in reality, the ocean is, of course, near its limit in carbon dioxide. There are giant dead zones forming in the ocean where there is literally no air, so the fish cannot breathe. Yes, fish breathe oxygen. Who knew that? Sea creatures do. And when there's these giant dead zones created by climate change, they can't breathe. They die. And then what does that do to fisheries, right? Weather events have also gotten more destructive over the last few decades. Arctic ice is melting even faster than previously believed. In fact, there was a day, I think, where it was 73 degrees in one of the coldest, what's supposed to be one of the coldest places on Earth. Not minus 73, 73, a balmy summer day. It was warmer in the Arctic than it was, I think, I remember looking at the temperature where I live in Michigan. That's craziness. Not only that, but you have extreme temperatures in so many places. In fact, it's forecast to be 122 degrees Fahrenheit this week in India. Deadly temperatures in the middle of Australia and all over the world. I mean, think of it in this context, right? We have had overall a relatively stable climate over the span of human civilization, which actually has allowed us to create human civilization because it's been so relatively stable. What's going to happen if it's not stable? If we have an unstable climate? I'd hate to see what happens. I'd hate to see what happens to society when it becomes unstable. But that's what all these scientists are telling us. They said, on our current trajectory, the report warns, planetary and human systems are reaching a point of no return by mid-century, in which the prospect of a largely uninhabitable Earth leads to the breakdown of nations and the international order, which means, of course, anarchy, war. The scenario also warns that our current trajectory will likely lock in at least 3 degrees Celsius of global heating, which in turn could trigger further amplifying feedback effects, unleashing further warming. This would drive the accelerating collapse of key ecosystems, including coral reef systems, the Amazon rainforest, and in the Arctic. Now, all that Arctic ice melts. Well, what's ice made out of? Water. That's going to rise the oceans, right? Not only that, coastal destruction. Where's a lot of our cities built? On the coastlines. So that's a disaster. Massive migrations into the interiors of the country. Not only that, but if it's going to wreck the Amazon, what do they call the Amazon? Oh, right, it's the lungs of the world. We lose that, we're also screwed. Some 1 billion people would be forced to attempt to relocate from unlivable conditions. You think migration is bad now? Alt-righters, well, it's about to get worse as we move further into this century. 2 billion would face scarcity of water supplies, agriculture would collapse in the subtropics, and food production would suffer dramatically worldwide. The internal cohesion of nation states like the US and China would unravel. They said even for 2 degrees Celsius of warming, which, by the way, that was the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement, to not get above 2 degrees Celsius, which, by the way, Trump backed out of, says that more than 1 billion people may need to be relocated, and in high-end scenarios, the scale of destruction is beyond our capacity to model, with a high likelihood of human civilization coming to an end. absorb that for a second. These scenarios, on the worst, say that's it. Human civilization, you had a good run, but you done messed it up. That's it. Now, there is a reason. There is a way to avoid this, of course. And they say, in the report, they describe the only way to avoid the risks of these scenarios is to mobilize akin in scale to the World War II emergency mobilization. But this time focused on rapidly building out a zero-emissions industrial system to set and train the restoration of a safe climate. Now, the end of our civilization. We can avoid it. We still have a little bit of time, but not much. Not much at all. And the more time that goes by, the less likely we're able to pull off the amount of necessary transformational change that is needed to avoid this. Now, we can do it, but we have to have the political will. Now, I got to ask you, defenders of Western civilization, right? Is that all? If that's all you care about, where are you guys? This is the end of civilization. You said it started in the West. Well, then I guess maybe, according to you and your racist mind, maybe the West should be able to fix it. Because right now, the West is the problem. Again, the creators of civilization, right? What about the pro-lifers? It's very pro-life to let pretty much millions, billions of people die. Where are you? Where are you? We're looking straight into the abyss here. It is coming. It's coming. Are you going to do something about it? Well, of course not. Fake news, you'll probably say. Alarmists is the other word. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to let you guys drag us down with you. Hell no. Now, for those of you who are still not quite sure and are on the fence, let's look at who wrote this. The new policy briefing was written by a man named David Spratt, Breakthrough Research's director, and Ian Dunlop. Ian Dunlop is an interesting case because he was a former senior executive at Royal Dutch Shell, who also previously chaired the Australian Coal Association. This guy was one of them. He made money off pollution, off creating climate change. And then he looked at the evidence, I assume, and he said, I'm wrong. And that I need to help us fix this problem before we destroy ourselves. And it's not just them. As I mentioned earlier, you had members of the Australian military. In the briefing's foreword, retired Admiral Chris Berry, Chief of the Australian Defence Force from 1998 to 2002, and former Deputy Chief of the Australian Navy, commends the paper for laying, quote, bare the unvarnished truth about the desperate situation humans and our planet are in, painting a disturbing picture of the real possibility that human life on Earth may be on the way to extinction in the most horrible way. A high-end 2050 scenario, they said, finds a world in social breakdown and outright chaos. But a short window of opportunity exists for an emergency global mobilization of resources in which the logistical and planning experiences of the national security sector could play a valuable role. Well, there you go. Defense contractors, here's your new job. Instead of bombing brown people in the Middle East, why don't you work to save our planet? That'd be fantastic. And save our species instead of bombing the crap out part of them. But look, overall, I don't want to leave you with a completely terrible message, because in the midst of all this doom and gloom in this report, there is a little bit of hope. And that's what we're trying to get through to you, right? And again, the implications are dire. And even if it's not the worst case scenario, it's not going to be great. But again, I got to stress, there is some hope, but only if we mobilize, only if we do something. We put forward our resources, which means, by the way, jobs, investment, working together from common cause, and fight for our world. Nothing but good can come from that kind of cooperation. But it will only happen if we have the political will to work together to put forward all we have to save our species. Okay. Try to leave you with a little bit of hope, guys. All right. I want to thank you for tuning in. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the messages. Please consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. We need your help, as usual. And I want to thank you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, Nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Up next, TYT.